Okie dokie, folks, and welcome back to Monday Night Shaw right here on Love Wrestling. This week, very, very special interview. Definitely like the biggest name star we've had on Monday Night Shaw. Former Intercontinental and Tag Team champion from the WWE, and definitely a Canadian wrestling legend, Jacques Rougeau, a.k.a. The Mountie, is on the show. How you doing, Jacques?
How you doing, Goose? Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm doing great. And yeah, I'm happy you've decided to come on the show. I wanted to have you on here because you're running your own shows out in Montreal there, and it's a big competition Canada-wide, and a lot of my friends have been on the shows and stuff. So I wanted to put them out there because you've got some great opportunities going. So why don't you tell us a little about the competition and what the possibilities are for the winners?
It's pretty awesome, Goose. I got to tell you, it's an idea I had a couple of years back, and my girlfriend and myself, and it was based on a TV show called Star Academy, and which were they in Quebec. They would go ahead and recruit all the young singers from across the province, and every week they would take them in on a TV show, and they would eliminate them, and finally, where the grand winner would go ahead and sing at the Bell Center in front of 20,000 people with Celine Dion, and so it was called the Star Academy. And so one day I was during the pandemic, I was doing a lot of podcasts, and I had a lot of special guests, from different disciplines come into my tiki, where I had my podcast, and I had this girl that was one of the winners of Star Academy, and as she was telling me the story of how she got into that and went to sing with Celine Dion and all that. After the show, I looked at my girlfriend and I said, "Hey, we should do that with wrestling. We should do a wrestling academy, and just and have the best wrestlers come from all over the place, and just find some sponsors and fly them in and get them hotels and just start eliminating them, at the end. And but we need a prize. We need to find a prize to draw them in there, So finally, at the time last year, in our first edition, we round up like $20,000, like 4 winners of $5,000. And out of nowhere came the idea of calling a wrestling school in the United States. So I reached out to QT Marshall's Nightmare Factory at the time, and I talked to QT for a short time, and I told him what I was doing with the wrestlers and the talent in Quebec and Canada, and wanted to make them feel special. So I said, would it be possible for my 4 winners to I'll rent a truck, and we'll drive down to Atlanta 24 hours, and I'll take them in for 1 day or 2 days for a weekend there, and you just treat them like, they're superstars. Like, you give them a lesson 1 day, a seminar the next day, and having an interview session, like, show them how to do interviews and stuff, and just make them feel like they were in the big leagues, and so he says, yeah, Jacques, he says, I do that. And I noticed that QT Marshall, when I spoke with him for the first time, because I didn't know him when I called him, and I noticed he had this very big respect for me, like, he and he was really nice to me. And I said, okay, so I said, well, let's do that. So as time went along, the first year, I start using my notoriety, and I start doing podcasts, but doing podcasts in Australia, doing them in Europe, doing them in England, everywhere around the world. I was doing podcasts, and everywhere I was talking about the Nightmare Factory, like, one of the prizes where, so next thing you know, QT Marshall, he calls me up about 3 months into this thing, and he says, Jacques, he sends me a message. He says, Jacques, I need to speak with you. And I'm going like, oh shit, I hope I didn't do anything wrong. Like, so then I get on the phone with him, and then he tells me, he says, Jacques, he says, what are you doing? I says, what do you mean? He says, well, I'm getting calls from around the world. He says, people that want to come train at the Nightmare Factory, they want to come and see it. And I said, he says, you're doing something. He says, why don't we give them a week to your winners instead of just a 1 day or 2? Why don't you bring them down for a whole week? I'll give them a seminar and a whole training for a week. So I said, wow, that's awesome. So I put that in the group chat, because I had a group chat with all the boys and the ladies and the men that were in the competition. So I send the message out to everybody. Hey, you're going to win $5,000, but you're not only going to spend a day, you're going to spend a week with QT Marshall. And so they all were very happy. And next thing you know, I keep doing my podcasts. I do about 40 podcasts around the world. And finally, about 6 months later, he calls me back, 3 months before the competition starts. And then he says to me, he says, Jacques, it's incredible. He says, what you're doing? He says, listen, why don't, he says, we give them 3 months training, and I went like, holy shit, 3 months. And yeah, but I said, how much is that going to cost me? He says, no. He says, I'm going to give you 3 months for your 4 winners for free. So that's how we build that relationship. And that was last year. And after the tournament ended last year, just on the last month of the tournament, last August, he decided to give me another candy. He says, hey, he says, Jacques, he says, I'm going to give a candy, he says, to a Nana, that he called it, a little Nana. He says, I'm going to give a Nana because we really became his pet project. And then he says, why don't the 4 winners, because since we're opening Toronto AEW, he says, why don't you the 4 winners come and wrestle on Dark and Dynamite? I'll have them on the 2 shows. So that happened too. So after the whole competition was finished last year, I remember calling him the next day, and I told him, I said, so QT, I said, what do you think? Did you like the experience? And he says, we're doing it again this year. And I was so happy. I said, yeah, great. So a few things have changed since then. For this year's competition, the prizes are $10,000 now to the winners, and
wow,
yeah, $10,000 to 3 winners, 2 men and 1 woman, and the 3 months of the Nightmare Factory is still there. But now he gave me another Nana. Is like we just like the 7th of May we had the first quarterfinals 3 weeks ago, and then in 1 week from now, not even 1 week, in 6 days from now, on the 4th of June, Sunday night, we have the second half of the quarterfinals. And then on the 20th of August, the best of the 7th May are going against the best of next week. And it's going to be the semifinals on the 20th of August. And then on the 17th of September, there's going to be the finals where all the gifts are going to be given out and stuff. But what's great is every show we've had, like the one we had, the finals last year, and this first show and next show, and all the shows we're having, QT Marshall comes on the giant screen in Montreal from Atlanta. And after every match, he eliminates somebody, and he keeps one for the semifinals. So he just gave me another gift about this year, where he said, Jacques, he says, why don't we give a consolation prize for one of the guys that are eliminated, during this whole tournament, and on your last show on the 17th of September in the finals, he says, I'm going to come to Montreal, and he says, I'm going to wrestle with one of your losers, like one of the guys that. So he says, I've never wrestled in Montreal. So he said, that'll be fun, and it'll put a little encouragement for those who were eliminated, So this is all really a great project. And I'm so excited. We're sold out, and for this show coming up on Sunday, 400 people. It's like a dungeon, and we're in there, and then it's going to be seen on YouTube 5-6 days later. Actually, if you want to go, if anybody wants to go see my first show of the 7th of May, they just go on wrestling-academy.ca. You could maybe put that down at the bottom there, wrestling-academy.ca. You could go see the first show, and then you'll be able to see the next one of the 4th of June, probably 4 or 5 days later. So around the 10th of June, you could go see the second part of the quarterfinals, which is really fun for you guys, because we have so many guys from out west and girls, that are from Calgary, Edmonton, and Regina, and Saskatoon, and we got a bunch of people from all over.
Yeah, that's definitely that's definitely how I came to hear about all this. It was through my friend Cato, who I've wrestled a bunch of times, and he was telling me, "Oh yeah, I'm going over to Montreal to do this thing for Jacques Rougeau."
Stewie, right?
Yeah, Stewie. And I was like, the Mountie, and he was like, yeah, and yeah. So he went over, and then my other friend, Relentless Riley Rose, she went over.
Yeah,
and
she
I
did.
heard her and Zoe wrestled, and so I actually looked that up because, like you say, your last show was available on YouTube. So I watched that, and I thought Zoe and Riley had an incredible match.
Incredible, and you know what's good, Goose, about that? I'll tell you what really is really fun for me to announce to you is because Riley was not chosen. It was Zoe Sager was chosen, but because we had one girl that was injured, pulled out of the competition, Riley was brought back in. So Riley is taking the place. So she's right back in the tournament now. So yeah, she's going to be in the semifinals, Riley, and we loved her so much, not only in the ring, but her mom, Colleen, and her person, and her personally, they were such good people. So it was easy for us to, and especially that after I met a lot of people after the show, after the choice was made by QT Marshall, and by myself, because Zoe was a little lion in there, she really was, and a little tiger, but she was. I had so many people that came up to me after the show and talked to me about Riley Rose, Riley Rose, and I was saying like Jesus, and I really liked her too, she's only 17 years old. So it was like I liked her too, and that's why she was the first one that came up to mind. Like, hey, let's bring her back in the competition, and because too many people wanted her to stay.
Yeah, she's got a really like a great attitude. Zoe, like Zoe, I can tell you this, like, because I've trained with Zoe and whatnot, and we all go to this sort of training, the same training center, and Zoe is there all the time, like literally all the time. Like every time I've been down to go to train at the training center, Zoe is there. Like she works harder than any other wrestler in the entire province of Alberta.
I'll tell you, she impressed me. She was a little tiger out there. She's not tall and she's not big, and she's like, but she doesn't give her place. She's a go-getter. I'll tell you.
Yeah, no, she's legitimately like, like she's scary to wrestle her because like it's like, oh, she's intense, man.
There's a couple of good guys too. That Brandon Bright, I think was from there.
Yes, KB6.
And then there was I know coming up soon. There's a Michael Richard Blay, which I'm looking forward to see because I think he trained with Zoe Sager. Is that possible that they trained together?
Yeah. He MRB was trained by TJ Wilson, Tyson Kidd, and then he has trained Zoe Sager as well as me. So yeah, I'm rooting for Michael all the way. Yeah. I honestly feel like it's kind of redundant for anyone else to even join the competition if Michael's in there, because like that's how much confidence I have in
Wow. And I feel and I've had some comments about other guys that feel the same way about the Lion Bobby Sharp, and about also Sean Moore, and about Jesse V from Ontario, and there's a lot of big guns. Cody Brown, there's a lot of big guns in there that are coming from left and right, even from Winnipeg. Chad Daniels has come a long ways. I don't know if you know Chad Daniels. Have you ever heard of him?
I have met him. Yeah, for sure. I was in Battle Royal with him at the. They had a big show at the Victoria Pavilion in Calgary.
How long ago?
It was last year. Yeah, it was a good time.
Because he just came on the 7th of May, and he won his spot there. QT Marshall really had an eye for him, and he's got a lot better since the year before, and great shape, great kid all around, just polite, and you talk about having a nice attitude,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think that's one of the most important things in all of wrestling is just people having a good attitude and getting along with each other. I think that's extremely important.
We gotta, and I'm thinking, I'm coming back to Zoe Sager. I'm thinking of, she's a young lion in there, but she's going to be caught up in the zoo there because, there's a couple of Jane M's and Emma Smiley Miley, and then there's Casey Spinelli. And, there's a couple of girls out there that I'll tell you, that they have a reputation that follows them as being great workers. So so it's this show coming up on Saturday. I can't wait. There's 4 girls in a tag match, semi-main event, which is like 3 of those 4 girls had tryouts with WWE, with Impact Wrestling, and so I can't wait to see plus I can't wait the match between, like I said, the Lion Bobby Sharp against Sean Moore, and then you got the Cody Rhodes against Michael Richard Blay, and then you got so much talent. You got so much talent on this show coming up, like coming from all over Canada. It's just absolutely amazing. And in this show, which is going to be very special, is like QT Marshall is the judge, in the shows all the time. But QT is going to Mexico on this show here on Sunday. The AEW is going to open up Mexico, he's going. So he's going to. He won't be available to be on the giant screen. So we found the replacement, my brother Raymond, the half of the fabulous Rougeau brothers. so my brother is going to be the judge on this show coming up. Yeah, so that's going to be awesome. It's going to be fun because Raymond's he wrestled for 30 some years, and and great commentator for WWE after that. And he knows his business, so it's going to be really based on talent and charisma and ability in the ring and professionalism. And another thing too that you got to know, Goose, about this competition, what's really, really great is this competition is for 6 years and older in the fans, because there's no tables, there's no chairs, there's no middle fingers, there's no cussing. If somebody cusses, they're out of the tournament. If anybody used the poles, they're out of the tournament. It's like the kind of show we're giving is like agility, charisma, ability in the ring, how to get the crowd going, no cheap heat. It's like you go in there and you get some serious good heat by working hard, like Zoe Zager did on some guy. And like the style also that I'm starting to understand, because I had a good conversation with him, is Richard Blay, which he has that good old Bret Hart kind of heat there, and where he works hard, but you need to work some moves, you need to have some technique in there, some storylines, and so anybody could come and watch the show with their kids and just have a great time, see nice acrobats, high flying and stuff like that. So this show is accessible to the whole family.
Yeah, no, it's always good when it's not like a complete like bloodbath. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of fun once in a while when things get a little heated or whatever, but also, it should be appropriate for the kids to watch,
That's just because you're brought up like that. But to tell you the truth, I had my own territory for 20 years before COVID, and there was never one chair, and there was never and there was no violence at all. I was giving conferences in schools against bullying because of an incident I had in the WWE, and it was like that just changed my life tremendously. So I went to get some. So just in the last show, for example, I had a whole school that came with 50 kids. One principal, he brought 50 kids from his class that were 10 years old to come see the show. So it's all based on, it's almost like a Walt Disney kind of wrestling, but you have to use your imagination. And and the fun part about this show, about the people that come watch the show, the 400 people that we bring into this show, it's people from companies, people from school that never been to a wrestling show. They're like virgins. So it's like when you get in the ring, if you take a headlock and you take a guy down real fast and he bumps like that, people go, wow. They're still impressed by simple, basic moves and facial expressions. So the guy who receives a drop kick in the ring, he's not up on his feet before the guy who gave it. The guys are selling. The guys are telling, so it's really back to basic wrestling with high spots and stuff like that, where at the end of the evening, people really screamed and had fun, but without cussing, without blood, without sex, without violence and all that. And so we're in a good position right now where we're having a lot of fun with young people, new wrestling fans. And I'm saying to myself, if QT Marshall is watching, because the trainers, let's face it, the winners are going 3 months, but they got 3 great trainers. They got QT Marshall, and that's 5 days a week for 3 months. They got QT Marshall, Billy Gunn, one half of the Smoking Guns that I used to work with my brother and Carl Willett as the Quebecers. We work with the Hall of Famer Billy Gunn, and then Cody Rhodes. Those are the 3 teachers that you have for 3 months. And Cody Rhodes just coming off WrestleMania against Roman Reigns. He's really hot. He's the ball of fire. Yeah. So if you're a Canadian talent and you have a chance to win $10,000 and spend 3 months at a lesson that's paid for 3 months to go spend with these 3 guys for 5 days a week for 3 months, that's the competition to be in. And I remember when I was young, and now when we put this together, me and my girlfriend, I always remember what my dad told me when I was young. He said, if you want to make it in this business, there's 2 things that are going to make it happen. Being at the right place at the right time and knowing the right people. And that's the 2 things that's going to make it happen in this business. And this competition is bringing both to all the competitors.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's great, and I like it. This could literally be like people's like big break, like QT Marshall and stuff. He's Nightmare Factory that's heavily involved with AEW and whatnot. So like, yeah, 100%. This could be like anyone who's coming in and joining this competition for you. This could be like their big breakout into stardom. I just want to know, like, for you, what was like your moment for you, like when you had your first big moment? Like, I know you come from your father was a wrestler and stuff, but when was it like, okay, you got to
my biggest moment in wrestling in my younger career is when I got on the phone with Stu Hart, and Stu Hart was in Calgary, And then Brett was driving the bus at the time. He wasn't even a wrestler. And I called. I was like 17 years old, and I wanted to be on the road. I wanted to become a wrestler since I was a very young age. And my father kept looking at me, and he kept calling me Bones because I was like tall and I was skinny. And he kept telling me, "You're not ready. You're not ready." So finally, I decided I went to see my mom, and I told my mom, I said, "Mom, I need to borrow $500." And then because I got on the phone with Stu Hart. And Stu Hart, and I'm sure you know all the stories of Stu Hart, but anyway, it's so funny because I got on the phone with Stu Hart, and out of respect for my dad and my uncle, because in the West you had the Harts, and the East you had the Rougeaus. Those were the two big families of wrestling at the time, and then so he had a lot of respect for my family. We were 4 generations of wrestlers. So when I got on the phone, I managed to get his phone call, his area code 403. I can't remember what his number was anyway, but I got on the phone with him, and this is how the conversation went. I said, "Mr. Hart," I said, "this is Jacques Rougeau from Montreal." And he answered me, says, are you any kin with the Rougeau family there?" And I said, "Yes, sir." I said, it's my uncle Johnny and my father Jacques. Yeah. When can you start there? And then that was it. And then that was my conversation with him. And then he took me in. It was my first territory. I was 17 years old. And then those were the days where Casa Bubu was there, John Foley. It was Patty Ryan. There was Hubert Gallant. There was I'm thinking of all the talent that was there, and there was about 20,000 Hearts in there, kids. There was a bunch of plus, but it was amazing. I had a chance that he took me under his wing, and I was doing. It was funny, Lethbridge, and I was doing Jesus Christ, Saskatoon, Regina, the loop, and coming back and then Edmonton, and then doing all the loops. I'm trying to Madison Hat, and then I was doing. But there was Lethbridge, and there was another town that we do on Monday and Tuesday. I can't remember what it was, but there was this loop that we do every week, and every Wednesday we'd go to Saskatoon by bus, and Brett was driving the bus at the time, and putting up the ring, and then we'd do Friday, we'd do Regina and drive all the way back all night, and come back for Stampede Wrestling on Friday at Stampede, and those were the days. I did that in '78, and I did that in '79. I came back too for another, and then before I went to Mexico. So that was for me. That was the beginning of my life. That I've been doing for 45 years. I wrestled after that for 45 years.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible. Like, sounds like a really good time. Like, we've done some driving with some of the wrestlers around here, and we just go locally, and there's usually like 4 of us in a car, but it's always a good time just riding in the car with the other wrestlers, and especially if there's like a name guy like you or someone else who's been in WWE on the show. You always get like a lot of great like stories and stuff.
Yeah, I remember.
I can't imagine a bus would be amazing.
I'll tell you, I remember a story one time. We were coming back from Regina, and Brett was driving, and Brett hit a moose, with the bus, and it was just wow, I'll never forget that experience, like hitting a moose, with the bus, because it really took a hell of a bump. But anyway, it's like, but so many stories. And I remember, I was so young. I was 17 years old and so naive, and Stu had so much respect for the Rougeau family. So I was staying at the St. Regis Hotel on 7th Avenue with the whores and the Indians, and that's where the place where I was staying, because it was cheap, and then that's all I could afford, and every Sunday he'd go ahead and ask me to come and have lunch at his house. And then again, there was 20,000 Hearts, but there was 20,000 cats in the house. It was amazing, the cats that were in that house, but so nice. The family was so nice to me, and at the beginning I thought that, he really liked me, but then I realized that it's just that he wanted to get me in his basement, and in his dungeon, he had a dungeon there, the basement where he used to stretch the guys. But I'd heard about it, so every time I'd finish eating, he'd always tell me, why don't we go downstairs there? And I'd say, well, Stu, I'd really like to, but I had something planned there. But thank you very much for the invitation. But I gotta go. But I was staying away from that basement because I heard there was a lot of stretching going on in that basement.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I mean, like I can't imagine like all the stories, like you, like all the crazy like people that you must have met over the years, like Montreal. Like I can't imagine. Did you have a good story about Andre the Giant?
Oh my God. Well, Andre was special to me because Andre worked for my dad and my uncle. He came to Quebec, and the first place he came was in Montreal. And Edouard Carpentier was like a legend, and he's the one who brought him into Montreal, Quebec. And I was like, maybe I remember being about 8, 10 years old, going to the Montreal Forum where the Canadians were playing, like 18,000 people. But then it was wrestling, and Andre would always come in for the big shows, and he took a liking into me. I'd go get his hot dogs and stuff like that at the store, at the restaurant and the canteen there that was in the building. And then I grew up a little later in the business where I was doing independent companies from like 78 to 85. I was going a lot in independent companies like Kansas City. I was going to Florida. I was going for the Grahams. I was going to Tennessee for the Fullers. I was going to Atlanta, Georgia for Ole Anderson, Tommy Rich, and NWA. And I did a lot of small territories like that for 7 years. And every time, of course, that there was those small territories, they'd have big shows, and Andre would show up on those big shows just for one date, but he spoke French. So when he'd come to the shows, we had a natural click there. He remembered me getting his hot dogs when I was young, and now I'm working the business, so we stayed friends. And then when I came to WWF, it was amazing because I was one of those lucky guys who learned how to play cribbage. Crib. I don't know if you know what that is. Crib. It's like
It's a card game.
Cards and pegs, like 15-2, 15-4. It's like it's an intellectual card game, with a board where my mom taught me how to play that game. And it was just amazing that I knew that because very few wrestlers knew how to play that game. It wasn't a popular game, but Andre loved that game. So every time I get in the building, in the WWF for all those years, like there was Tito Santana, there was Arnold Skolin, the agent, and was myself. There was about 3 guys that played that game with him. So what was amazing is we reconnected again when I got to WWF, and then every time we had a long tour, like in Europe or anywhere on the trip, it was always so funny. Even long flights from Boston to Los Angeles, like in 5-6 hour flights and stuff. Then Andre was always sitting in first class, and because he was too big, of course, and he was so big that they couldn't rent the seat beside him. So every time we'd take off flying, it was funny because the flight attendants would come in the back and they'd look at all us jabronis in the back, the most of the crew, and then they'd say, she'd say, Jacques Rougeau, and I'd say, yeah, and she'd bring me up front, and I'd be flying first class all the time because I'd be playing crib.
Oh, okay.
So that was a heat getter, but I gotta tell you, it was good that I played crib,
That's awesome, man. And I always like to hear stories, and I think Andre the Giant is just one of the most fascinating and interesting wrestlers from the days gone by, just because of his sheer mass and just.
Well, how can you forget WrestleMania 3? WrestleMania 3, we were against Beefcake and Valentine, my brother Raymond and I. And he was against Hulk on the 93,000 people at the Pontiac Silverdome, and that was considered the biggest event, the change of times for WWF. It's like the biggest indoor event they'd ever had, and it was a game changer. That WrestleMania 3,
Could you just describe to me how it felt when you walked out your music hit, or you walked out the curtain, or I don't know if you got to ride in the little ring cart.
Yeah. But I can tell you, I could tell you how it was before getting out there. I remember like it was yesterday there. I was trying to put the laces through my boots there, and my foot was going like this. I was so freaking nervous. My throat was dry from being nervous, just, I don't know if you ever had a dry throat. So if you're nervous, and we had to go in front of 93,000 people, and then the adrenaline was so huge. And my brother Raymond keeps reminding me every time that he remembers the time where just before the show, they open the doors, that he went all the way up to the top, with the empty seats, and looking down at that little squared little thing that was the ring, from all the way up top there, how impressive that was, and but it's funny. I don't remember that much the match as much as the event. Like, a couple of matches that I do remember tremendously, of course, is the main event, Hulk and Andre. But I also remember that match between Steamboat and Savage, Macho Man Randy Savage against the Ricky Dragon Steamboat, which I considered one of the best wrestling matches that I'd ever seen at the time. I remember all the boys being backstage and watching on the TV screens from the dressing room and watching that match between Steamboat and Savage. It was just out of the ordinary. It was just something. It was the greatest match, for us to watch. But yeah, what an event! I remember being there a couple of days ahead of time, doing all these interviews and stuff and marketing things. It was the biggest thing. Just to know that the whole world was watching from every arena around the world. They were sold out every arena, and there was no wrestling. It was just a giant screen in every arena. And having it's amazing.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I just I know the way I've felt when I've walked out in the Legion in front of 100 people, and I just how good it makes you feel. I can't imagine 93,000.
What's amazing in that is going out there and just doing a couple of spots and having the people react. And hearing them answering back to you, because when you're doing a nice high spot or a nice storyline and people get into it, and you have 90-some thousand people roaring at the same time and screaming the same way and thinking the same thing that you're making them think, that's an amazing feeling. Like it's almost like you're in control of the world, when you do that, and when you accomplish that, I think it's one of the greatest moments. I had one greater moment in my career. I got to tell you, just one is when Hulk let me beat him in Montreal, because I had a one-on-one against Hulk Hogan in Montreal, and he put me over. And
that's crazy.
And if you go on YouTube and just see Jacques Rougeau versus Hulk Hogan, I get the pin 1, 2, 3 with no chairs, no gimmicks. It's just a clean pin on him. And that's when he was NWO too, at his hottest. But he had this great respect for me, Hulk, and the family. He had respect for the Rougeau family and stuff. And I had organized that show. It was my show. And he just came in and put me over. And it was 20,000 people that went like.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Not only because Hulk Hogan is got kind of a reputation as being a bit of a politician and stuff. You don't hear about too many people that defeated Hulk Hogan in their hometown. It's just not
especially a clean pin, especially a clean pin. Just one. Yeah. Go check it out on YouTube. Jacques Rougeau versus Hulk Hogan. You'll see. It's pretty amazing. And it was so amazing. What was so amazing about that match was I was the Quebec legend and he was the world legend. That I built it like that, match of the legends. But me was the local legend. He was the world legend, and in front of all my fans, thinking that, and he was NWO, he was big heel, but when he came out, forget it, people booed me at 99% in my hometown, and they cheered for him. It was he was so hot. He was so hard. I didn't figure that one out. I missed only a few things in my career like that, and that was one I missed. And when he came out, if you go see the match, you'll see. But the amazing thing about that, once again, it was that at the beginning of the match, everybody booed me, everybody. And at the end of the match, I had 60-70% of the match that people were cheering for me, because, I worked hard and I want to gain the people's respect by working hard and him cheating and me just trying to get my. So you'll see the match, you'll enjoy it, I'm sure, if you're a wrestling fan. But you'll see the controversy. You'll see what I had to face when I came out in front of my hometown and realized that, hey, you messed up, boy. You didn't call this one good, because I didn't expect to be a heel in my hometown, and it happened because Hulk was just NWO and it was so hot NWO.
Did that end up affecting how you guys ended up doing the match or anything? I don't. A little
bit. I think Hulk regretted putting me over, after that, because he realized that. But not really. I think what changed, it was a game changer, because so many guys wanted to, even Brett, a lot of guys wanted to beat Hulk, wanted to work with Hulk, and Hulk wouldn't do it. He just had a few people that he wanted to work with and choose with, and it put a lot of heat on me, because a lot of guys wanted to be in my boots, and a lot of guys didn't understand why me, it's like, why him, and so because like I think it goes back to telling you that since I was a kid, he was my friend, and I mean, he had this respect for the family, the Rougeau family, and then so and then he also liked the fact, to be honest with you, that ever since we were in the WWF, like I was there for 11 years. And every three characters. There was the Mountie, it was the Quebecers, there was the Fabulous Rougeau brothers. And every time that I went into an arena with 15, 20,000 people, I always entertained the people. I always had a great match, whether it was in singles or tag teams. Every time I had a match, I'd get the people up on their feet, and they'd have a great time. And many times when we first were in his shows, I'm not embarrassed to say that we were the openers of the shows a lot of times,
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't understand, and that he understood, but a lot of people didn't understand that how important the first match on the card is, because when the first match is where you give the first impression, and you don't have a second chance to give a first impression, and so when we'd go out and we'd win the crowd over in the first match and have them almost standing on their feet, then when the second match would come in, the people were flying, man. It was like, so when he'd get in the ring at the end, it was like so easy for him, and he told me that one day, and he explained that to me, like, every time you guys run the card, man, he says, every time, I love working after you guys, because the people are there, like, you go get the people. So I think there was a lot of that, and there was also the fact that I had a huge fight with the British Bulldog, the Dynamite Kid, backstage.
Yeah, I was looking into you, doing a little bit of research or whatever, which is unusual for me for this show, but I did do that nonetheless. And there was like a couple of stories about you getting in a terrible brawl with Dynamite Kid.
Very horrible, because it was a sad time. It was a bad time in my life, and it was a time where he came and he was bullying a lot of people, and he was on serious drugs, and he just. He just beat me up in the dressing room, and when he did, then I had the choice. I put my head between my legs and go home, or do something about it, and I chose to do something about it, which is the hardest thing in my life, because I'm not a fighter. My brother Raymond's a tough guy. I'm not. I'm just an artiste. I'm one of the boys, a wrestler. But I'm not. I don't have the reputation of being a fighter, and I'm not embarrassed to say so. It's just not in my genes. I like to entertain, have fun, and laugh, but I don't have a bad bone in my body. So when he beat me up there, I felt the embarrassment, and I felt the embarrassment for the Rougeau name, from my dad, my uncle, for the whole Rougeau name. So I had to do something, and I knew if I didn't do anything, my brother Raymond would have done it, but my big brother would have came to my rescue, and there's nothing worse.
From what I heard, your brother's just like not to be trifled with, and so
no.
Probably lucky you got to it before your brother did.
Really, but my brother's a mean son of a gun, I'll tell you, but everybody knew that. So anyway, and so when it took me a week to finally get my courage up to do what I had to do, and I did it, and I think that Hulk had a lot of respect for me for that, because he knew who I was. He knew that I'm not a fighter. He knew how hard that was for me I didn't want to become a McFly like Back to the Future,
Yeah.
I didn't want to be one of those, and then the Rougeau name didn't deserve to have that, and I certainly didn't want to carry that flag, no, like
you I understand where you're coming from. Like, it sounds to me like it was a situation where, like, you needed to stand up for yourself, and like that it just needed to be like okay, all right, boys, we don't mess with this guy, because like, honestly, like, it sounded like it was a bunch of immature nonsense going on anyway, and the whole situation got really out of control and should have just been nipped in the bud in some other way. But personalities were personalities, and it was a big thing at the time.
Like I said, there was a lot of. It was hard. We were on the road 25 days a month, and we wouldn't see our kids but like 3-4 days a month, and our families, and it was very, very lonesome, very hard. And a lot of guys, they'd kill that pain with beer and alcohol and pills and drugs and steroids, and Vince was in a time when it was a time where Vince encouraged the guys to do steroids. He never told them, hey, take steroids, but anybody would come in with the shake with the steroids, he'd get a push. It's like, so the guys, especially Dynamite, who was a small guy, like the short guy, and I think he had to find a way to be noticed. And he was noticed by the steroids, and he was noticed also. And I don't think he needed to do so, because I think he was one of the greatest workers. When the Bulldogs came in, me and my brother were just worshiping them, like
Oh
saying,
yeah.
"Holy mackerel! This is the team. Nobody's ever going to be good like this team." And I remember the first time we met them in Madison Square Gardens, just before the whole fight started and the whole argument started. Vince put us in a match in the Madison Square Gardens against them, and then we sat all four of us beside Vince, and Vince, he looked at us and he says, "Okay, guys," he says, "I want to have a 20-minute Broadway, no winners." And they were champions. They were champions, and we were jabronis. So it's like, so when he said that in front of them, like, I think they got offended that they didn't beat us. And I think and Raymond and I were pretty good wrestlers. So we looked pretty good out there in a different way than steroids. We knew how to work, and so we pull our end too, but in a different kind of way, just tag team brothers and having good chemistry together. So we managed to look very good in that match. So when we came back, I think that started the whole heat between us, because and I think maybe at that time, because I'm not in Vince's head, but maybe at that time he wanted to tell the Bulldogs, "Hey, your ego's a little too high there now. Like we're gonna go ahead and bring you down to earth now. Maybe it was a time like that, and he used us to bring him down to earth. But we're not in a good position there, because it's we became enemies right away from them. So anyway, and so it was a time, and it's, if ever people want to refer or go to this story, they can always go. I was amazed, like just a couple of years back, there was a company in Toronto that called me up and wanted to do a story on it. It's called Dark Side of the Ring. And they did a story on that, and I couldn't believe that they how they made me look good in that thing. It's like, but I'm saying they made me look good, but they just told the story, and I couldn't believe that I looked good in there, because when it happened, I lost like 10 pounds in the week from the beating I got to the beating I give him.
Yeah.
I lost about 10 pounds. I couldn't eat. Every time I put food in my mouth, I'd throw up. I was afraid. I was afraid that I'd miss my shot, because then he'd kill me, or it was horrible. I couldn't sleep. It was a horrible time in my life, and it weighed a lot on me, and enough for that. The next 25 years after this incident, this is amazing how, one good thing comes out of that, because for 25 years, the last 25 years of my life, I don't think there's one school in Quebec that didn't see me come in front of 400 or 500 kids. I do bullying conferences. I've been doing it for 25 years. I've been doing this for free. And people are telling me, "Oh, Jacques, what a great guy, what a nice guy." And they don't even know that I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. Because for me, every time I share that with people, I show kids how to beat violence without. I show kids how to beat bullies without using violence. I found some ways of putting kids together and to work together, and for me, it's like such a success. It helps me. How can I say that? Connect or just. I don't know how to explain that, but it makes me feel good. And it gives me self-esteem of myself.
I hear you. We did a show here. It was up in Boyle, Saskatchewan, and before the show, it was being held at a high school. So before the show, or during the school hours, we did like a couple of like assemblies where we just brought the kids in, and all the wrestlers said, "Hey, don't do drugs and don't be a bully," and stuff. And we did all that. And it was a great time. I remember I loved it. Because I wrestle as the Canadian Goose, which is a heavy gimmick thing. And I get people honking. So I got them doing it all in the assembly, right? So then when I showed up for the show later on that night, my music hit, and I walked out with my buddy, and they were right into it before we even going. And it was a great time. Yeah, all the kids. It was awesome. I do want to ask you, because like I just said, I wrestle as the Canadian Goose, and I thought it was like one of the most Canadian gimmicks of all time. But you wrestled as the Mountie, from the RCMP. So tell me a little bit about what went into like creating that. Whose idea was that, and how did you enjoy performing as the Mountie?
I think the Mountie was one of the greatest highlights, some of the greatest highlights of my time, having this angle against Big Boss Man, the big American policeman against the Canadian policeman, and it was just awesome. It was a great time because Vince had asked me to come in as a Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and it was his idea. And I told him, I said, well, I'll come in with two conditions. The first condition is I have Jimmy Hart as my manager. And the second one, because I'd worked with Jimmy Hart, he's the greatest manager of all times that I'd ever seen, because he doesn't drink, he doesn't go out nightclubs. He's always on time. He's so professional. He doesn't swear. He's always there at 5 o'clock in the morning to give an autograph. He buys suits, to match your clothes for his characters. He was just so professional. So that was one of the conditions.
I've literally heard he's like the nicest guy in all of wrestling.
He is, and most professional, and the most reliable, and so that's what I told Vince. I said, I'll come in and two conditions. I have Jimmy Hart, my manager, and the other thing is I have an idea coming in with an electric cattle prod. I want to come in with a shock stick, and then he said, okay, whatever. And he had no idea what he was getting into because that got over big time, the shock stick, I'll tell you. And so it was great. And then finishing up on the angle after 2 years of being a Mountie, finish up in the jailhouse match against in Madison Square Gardens, being put to jail, spend the night in jail in New York precinct. That was just an amazing time, and winning the Intercontinental title against Brett, taking the belt off of Brett and giving it to Piper.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I know I popped earlier because, like you said, you got to wrestle Hogan, and that's like most people's favorite wrestler from the '80s. But mine is Piper. The fact that you got to wrestle Piper, that to me is like that's cool.
That was fun because I had a good angle with him, where he took the belt, and I had this idea, and he respected me enough, and he says, "Yeah, let's do it." So he put this vest, this anti-shock vest on, where I go to shock him, but he had it under his shirt, and I didn't see it, so I zap him with my shock stick, and he shakes, and then he falls down. But then I turn around to get rid of my stick, and when I turn around, he's back up on his feet. He never sold it, and then fucking boom, 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 boom. Then he takes my stick and he zaps me with my stick and then beats me, But what a pop in Madison Square Garden, or when we did that match, it was like. But it was fun, And then when he pulled the shirt off at the end, because people didn't understand why he didn't go down, he was the only guy. And then it said anti-shock, on his zip.
Because those are totally a thing that exists.
That was a winner there, but I'll tell you, that was a game. Yeah. So yeah, I had great. I worked with my Randy Macho Man with Miss Elizabeth in England, because the Mountie was very popular overseas also because of the suits they have over there with England. The guys in front of the tower,
the Queen's Guards.
Yeah, the Queen's Guard, and they're not allowed to move and smile and nothing. They're in front of the guards, and they can't. And then we did so many vignettes where I come in front of them, and I'm getting right in their face, and I have my shock stick, and they're not moving like this. And we did so many things. And one time I almost shocked a bird there that was right them in front of them, but I never shocked it. But I was gonna go do it just to have some kind of movement in their face or something, and they never moved. They never sold it. So
I've heard that if you touch them, they'll mess you up. You can do whatever you want, but if you touch them, then it's on.
I did so many things over there, that were not today is not politically correct. But I don't know if you remember Virgil. Virgil was the Ted.
I met Virgil. He came over to the show.
Ask him his match he had with the Mountie.
I don't talk to him regularly, but I met him one time, and I was
I had him shine my shoes in the middle of the ring there, with my shock stick, and something that politically correct you couldn't do today, But I was saying, shine my shoes. And but I had so much heat, and then in those days it was still like accepted, but barely, borderline. And so the Mountie had so much heat, and how can you forget my introduction as the Mountie when I
was just gonna say, didn't they have you sing the entrance song?
Yeah, forget about that. Let me tell you something a lot more funnier. What was really funny is, before I became the Mountie, 5 weeks before, on vignettes, they were showing vignettes of me, in every arena across the world, every TV station, they were saying Jesse the Body Ventura and Mean Gene were on the commentaries, and Jesse would say, well, Mean Gene, let's go see coming from Canada soon in the WWF, the Mountie. So then they'd show a vignette of me, a little sketch, and in that sketch, I'd be on my horse. I'd be in Montebello, you know, a little place up in Ontario, you know, and Quebec, near Quebec and Ontario border, and we're in Canada, and there's this car that pulls up beside me, and there's this young guy with his girlfriend. They're two Americans, and they're lost. They're in Canada, but they want to go back to the United States. So he pulls up beside me in his car, and then he says, he comes beside me and my horse, and I'm on my horse sitting here with that grin, that ugly face, and I'm like this, and then he looks up to me and he says, "Excuse me, officer. Excuse me, officer." And I look down to him and I said, "I'm not an officer. I'm the Mountie." So then he looks at his girlfriend in the car and says, "Boy, I think I just got a weasel here." So he looks back up to me, he says, "Excuse me, Mr. Mountie." He says, "Can you tell me how to get back to the USA? I'm lost." So I slowly get off my horse, and then I get in front of his car, in front of his door, and I said, "Come here." So then he gets out slowly of his car, you know, and he comes, and I bring him to the front of my horse. And then I take my horse underneath his mouth like this, and I put it up. And I look at him, I said, "You see that part of my horse? That always points to Canada. Now come here." And then I bring him in the back of my horse. And then I'd put the tail up. I'd lift the horse's tail up. And the camera was right in the donut. And then I'd say, "You see that part of my horse? It always points to the USA." And they showed that for like 5 weeks around the world. And let me tell you, Americans don't have a sense of humor that much, you know, and I had a lot of heat, you know, so when I started working as a Mountie in the States and everywhere, man, holy shit. It was
Did you ever have a chance to work as the Mountie as a babyface in Canada?
No. The Mountie wasn't a babyface nowhere.
Okay.
It was so funny because after all that I've done with the Mountie gimmick, it's so funny because after about a year and a half, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they took an injunction against the WWF to ban me from Canadian TV. I couldn't wrestle as the Mountie anymore. So that's why my gimmick died so fast after the jailhouse match, because you know they banned me from TV. So every time they were doing a TV taping in the States, I couldn't wrestle because I'd have to wrestle with another shirt on and a Jacques Rougeau, or they killed my gimmick. So I was always telling interviews and going on big interviews like nationwide and saying, "Hey, Mounties, get off your high horse. This is only a gimmick." You know, it's like you're killing my gimmick, you know, by keeping me from performing, you know. And,
I mean, it's pretty sad. It's like I don't think that the cops in America did the same thing to Boss Man.
No. Like, I think any normal person would know that, hey, that's entertainment. You know, how many times you watch a movie where you see a dirty cop? You know, it's a movie. You know, it's just, you know, it's like. But anyway, that cost me a lot for the Mountie. But nevertheless, I still became the Intercontinental Champion, and I still had 3 dolls that were made as the Mountie in Toys R Us around the world. And I used to land in Japan. I used to land everywhere. Go to Toys R Us. I'd see the Mountie dolls were there. So I did really well with the Mountie. And it's so funny because from the time I was champion as the Mountie, and the time that I lost the belt, I beat Brett like on a Monday, and on a Friday I lost the belt to Piper. I only had it like for 3 days, the belt. I was the shortest reign ever had in the Intercontinental belt. That was me for so many years. And every time I go to Comic-Cons, like now, 30 years later, I go everywhere around the world. I do Comic-Cons and stuff. They come up with me with dolls with the belt. They got pictures with me with the belt, you know. And people always tell me, sometimes my fans was the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. I was only 3 days champion, you know. But I think I left my mark, you know.
Yeah, like I mean, it is true. Like you've done some incredibly like extraordinary things for wrestling, and especially for like Canadian wrestling. Like we're talking about not only the show you did with Hulk Hogan that you promoted and 20,000 people came, but like you've got the shows coming up at the Club Soda here as soon as this Sunday. So why don't you give us the final rundown on what the biggest and best aspect of your show coming up Sunday is going to be, for why people should
to be okay. Well, let me just put it to you this way: for those out west, for you guys out west, just go on wrestling-academy.ca. Go see the show of the 7th of May already, and you'll see some talent there. But wait till you see the one on the 4th of June, Sunday. Give me 3-4 days to put it on YouTube after that. Then go on wrestling-academy.ca, because you see a lot of your talent. And then for me, the most exciting thing of all this is knowing that I have all these good talent going against each other for 9 months now. They've been inspiring of being on this show and winning the $10,000, going to work out with Cody Rhodes, QT Marshall, and Billy Gunn for 3 months. And one of the two wrestlers in the ring is going home, and the other one is going up in August for the semifinals. So it's almost like on the last show, it's amazing. There's some talent that fell down crying in the ring, and some were crying because they were sad, and some were crying because they were happy because they passed to the semifinals. There's a lot of emotions in this. It's like a reality show, but wrestling it's a work. It's fixed, but not the judge and not the performance. And so you're putting your neck on the line, and it's hard for a lot of talent because a lot of talent the talent is so good in there, and sometimes now, like, I'm at the point where I'm glad I'm not judged, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to have any heat. I don't want to say, hey, you keep going and you're going home. So I don't have to have that in my hands anymore. So it's QT Marshall does it now. It's going to be my brother Raymond that's going to do it. He's going to have the heat. But I now look at the 7th of May. I was there and I just looked at all the talent, and I gave them all the positive that I thought they had. I each positively spoke about them, and I always, most of the time, if you go watch the show, I'll say, well, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to leave it up to QT Marshall, and he can say whoever he wants to decide. So it's really an amazing time, an inspiring time for a young talent that want to make it big in the business in the States and the big leagues, and it's also a heartbreaking time for some talent. I know a couple of talent that didn't pass in the first round, like 3 weeks ago, and I've seen their attitude change, their self-confidence being not destroyed but hurt, because they didn't pass, and there's so much hype on this show for 9 months now on YouTube and podcasts around the world, that if you don't pass, like example, I had Jesse V against the Giant Orion. And they were two guys that I saw. I
wrestled Giant Orion. He's a beast.
And I saw in the finals that could have made the finals. So, but I also saw that after that he lost. He pulled out of the group. Like, we had a group there, and he just pulled out. He's like, he doesn't want to see it anymore, the contest. I know it hurt him, but there's nothing to be ashamed of, because but it hurts. There's another guy called Magnum, when he shoots, he never misses. And I was sure he was going to pass. I told him, even in my comments, if you go watch the show the 7th of May, I say he's one of the guys that I say he's going to pass, but QT didn't choose him. But I felt like after that, he wasn't the same guy for a couple of weeks. Like, his self-esteem kind of took a shot there, So it's a contest that's going to make people and it's going to break people. So you have to be very strong if you bring into this contest, and not because, and it's like QT says, not because I didn't choose you this time doesn't mean that your career's over. Maybe it's just not your time now. And next year you could come back again and join again, and maybe then it'll be your time.
100%.
So it's a hell of a
we were even talking about Riley Rose earlier, who didn't get accepted, but I don't think she was sour about it, and you guys asked her to come back. It's all about attitude,
But you know what? She cried after her match. She cried in my arms. When we met her at the end of the evening, we took her and we told her, you did great. And she cried, and she was so nice and so humble and so respectful that when the open happened, the girl pulled out after that. We took her right back in because, and so now she has another chance. She's going to be the one that has 2 chances. So when she comes back in the semifinals, she has as good a chance as anybody else to make it again. And that may work for her, because QT Marshall, I've told him the whole story, why she's back in, and we had to choose someone in this, and told QT also about her professionalism, she accepted the decision, and she asked me, the first thing she asked me is, what can I do better for next year? And I told that to QT, and I think QT loves that, because, you could take a guy that's much better in this competition. That's one thing that people got to understand. You could take a guy that's a much better wrestler, but if he has picked up in the last 15 years some bad habits, it's hard to break them. So if you have a young talent that doesn't pick up a bunch of bad habits, and they're manageable and they're coachable, then but they have talent, that may be somebody that he may just grab and say, hey, I'm pulling you in. And all the other talent that are good, they're going to say, what's that? I'm a lot better. Yeah, but you may be a lot better in the ring, but maybe that mentally or coachable or respect or a bunch of things. It's more, to win this contest, it takes more than a good interview and good ability in the ring. It takes a good mind. It takes a lot of good things that surround the business, you know. And then QT Marshall's a good man to spot those kinds of things, the attitudes and all that, the like they say, the agony of defeat and the thrill of victory. You know, you have to see everything in this contest to see who would be a good guy to have, to be able to work in these big leagues, where at one day you tell him, hey, I need for you to put this guy over in the middle, and not worry about him saying, yeah, but what about my image? You know, what about, you know? So you got to be coachable. And so this contest is really full with, it takes a lot of things to win this contest, and not just a good on the mic and good in the ring. So this is a great, and you know what? To tell you the truth, I've been in the business 45 years. And I'm still learning every day in this contest, because I keep learning more stuff at every show. I keep learning, and sometimes I even looked. If you watch the May 7th show on wrestling-academy.ca, you'll even see me at one point. I talked to QT Marshall, and I respect the guy a lot. It's thanks to him I got this contest, you know, because I was training for 3 months. But at one point, I look at him and I tell him on the giant screen, I say, you know what? You're a funny kind of guy there, QT. You're a funny kind of guy, because you just blew my mind with your choices. Like, you know, I didn't expect you to choose like that, you know. So go watch the show, guys. And it's on wrestling-academy.ca. Go watch the first show. And in about a week and a half from now, because in 5 days we're having a show, so give me an extra 5 days. And 10 days from now, you'll have the second part. But it'll be a lot more fun for you guys out west, because you have a lot of competitors that are coming from out west. And go watch this whole competition to see how it's going to be good on the 20th of August, when the best of the 7th of May meet the best of the 4th of June. And then out of the best, we're going to go with the 17th of September, where now it's going to be down to the nitty gritty, where the $10,000 for 2 men and 1 woman each have $10,000, and they've been chosen right there live on TV after the match. Say, I'm choosing you to come to the Nightmare Factory, and so there's going to be an amazing contest.
It sounds fantastic, and like I always say, gratitude is the attitude. And Jacques, I am very, very grateful that you decided to come on the show today and chat with me. So I really want to thank you for that, and we will make sure that this gets out before that your show goes down on Saturday. And I hope it all really goes
Sunday.
Oh,
it's
Sunday.
Sunday, 4th of June. It's okay. So if you have it up by Saturday, we're good.
Yeah, that's what I say. We'll have it up by Saturday, because then it'll definitely be up by Sunday. That's how time works. Anyway, Jacques, I again thank you so much for coming on here, and I hope you have all the success in the world with your shows. I want to see success for my friends that are being a part of them.
Yeah, exactly. The biggest success I could have in this competition, my biggest dream is to see one of the talent of Wrestling Academy make it big one day in the big leagues, because they were discovered on Wrestling Academy. That would be my best gift that I could ever have.
All right. Well, you pick Zoe or Michael, and that'll be done for sure. But I'm biased. Anyway, thank you very much for coming on the show, and I hope to see you again down the line.
All right, we'll talk again.
Okie dokie.
Thank you.
This has been Kyle Shaw, aka the Canadian Goose, for Jacques Rougeau and Love Wrestling. You've been watching Monday Night Shaw. Thank you again.